Hey everybody, I'm Beth Maitland, the DramaQueenBee, and today we're going to combine ideas and make beautiful table runners out of a jelly roll race. Now I know that that's kind of sounds odd, but if any of you are already quilters or member of Quilting Bees, you probably know what a jelly roll race is. If you're not and you're a beginner and you can sew a straight line and measure 2.5 inches wide with the fabric, you're in. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Manufacturers that make fabric will have their designers do a whole new line for whatever the seasons change or whatever the new line is going to be, and the manufacturers will take 2.5 inch wide strips, 2.5 inch wide, by the width of the fabric that is folded in half to be on the bolt. And the 2.5 inch wide fabrics represent every color in the entire new line of fabrics. This one in particular is really beautiful. It's the colors of my home. I love sort of muted Christmas colors, greens and burgundies, rusts, earthy colors. So this will be lovely when we put it all together to make table runners. But for the time being, this is designed by three sisters from Moda. It's the Sentiments Jelly Roll. And you can see why they call it a jelly roll. It's all swirled up like a bun, and what's better than quilting, eating sweets? So we're going to open this up and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Take the jelly roll and unravel it like this, and you'll see that it stacks of all the beautiful fabrics in their line, and they're all cut the width of fabric, the width of the bolt, by 2.5 inches wide. And you can see here on our measurement, there's 1, 2.5. They're all 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric, the width of the bolt. And so what we want to do is try to put these, there'll be a couple of some prints, and there'll be all the colorways will kind of go together. We want to kind of divide them into little sections by color, because we're going to start a countdown and we're going to sew all of these strips, all of them in the jelly roll, all together. So that's how it is sort of a jelly roll race, because in a quilting guild or a weekend at a quilt shop, when you take a class, they'll do a jelly roll race as a challenge, and to see who can manage to get all of these things sewn together and their whole quilt top finished in an afternoon, and it is absolutely possible. So we're going to pile these up by color. Maybe we'll put all the greens kind of in the same area, and all of the sort of muted reds in the same area, and then there's beiges in the same area. Start by mixing up all the colors. We'll take an end from one, right sides together on top of each other at a right angle. Selvage line just past the edge, and sew diagonal corner to corner. Now I'll show you one in red that I've already finished. This will be easier to see because I used white thread so you could see it. I sewed diagonally corner to corner. I snipped off the salvage, and snipped off the extra, and then I just finger pressed this open so you could see, but that makes a perfect straight strip. If you can do those two things, if you can cut 2.5 inch strips and you can make this diagonal seam, you're in. You all go to your machines, take your little gathering of beautiful jelly roll fabrics, sew contrasting colors, red, green, light, dark, sew them all together in a long string the way we talked about with diagonal seams, and we'll come back in a moment with these photographs to show you how that ends up. I found several fabrics in my stash that I wanted to use. I have young nephews and a brand new young niece, and I wanted to make them table runners that would be kind of fun, Christmassy, that would have some reindeers and some holly and some Christmas trees. And I also chose some other fabrics that are the right colors from my stash, but that aren't Christmas. Because it's Christmas doesn't mean you have to use Christmas fabrics. Here I've used dots, stars, and polka dots, and as you can see, they all mix together to make a really fun kind of theme. And because these aren't in a jelly roll, all we had to do was cut them in 2.5 inch strips, 2.5 inches, slice, 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 and we end up with several piles of all these different fabrics, just like we separated our jelly rolls. You lay them side by side in kind of a mishmash of light, dark, medium, print, subtle, and lay them all out and just start at the beginning and start sewing them all together, sewing them all together, sewing them all together. This first picture gives you some idea of, again, that diagonal seam. And as you can see, we're putting them right sides together at a right angle, and we're just sewing along on the sewing machine from one corner edge to the other corner edge diagonally, and then we just snip off the selvage and snip off the extra, and we open it up and press it, and we move on to the next strip from our piles. An important element is to mix up the colors, mix up the strips. Now, when we sew them all together later, you're going to find that there may be some actual overlap, and sometimes there's a duplicate of fabric that end up side by side. It doesn't matter. The idea is for it to be fun, quick, scrappy, and for you to feel the instant gratification of getting a job done, a beautiful project made in a short amount of time. Each together, one end to the other end, face down. Now we're going to sew the lengthwise seam. This next picture is showing you. We're going to sew straight down the long edge all the way to the very middle fold. Then snip it in two. Now you've got two strands, right sides together. Now you're just going to keep folding it in half, sewing the lengthwise, snip, folding it in half, sewing it lengthwise, snip, folding it in half. It probably was, I would say, 42 inches across when I stopped sewing the long sides together. So now that you've seen these pictures, we're going to go back to the work table and let me show you what we've done from there. One other step I wanted to mention is after you've got your table runner, the width that you want it, I would like you to take that to the ironing board, and I would like you to press all of the seams in one direction. It doesn't matter which direction, toward the top or toward the bottom, but they all should lay toward one direction. And then we lay it out and make a quilt sandwich. Let's talk about our backing. It is a white on white print. It's got berries and leaves, vines, and some flowers in the background, but it's a very subtle backing for the quilt or table runner. Then I used inside my very favorite 100% cotton quilt batting. And I love this for so many reasons. When you launder your project after it's made, I love that this shrinks because it's 100% cotton. It's not the thick polyester, it's not a blend. This cotton shrinks up and it makes every project you make really yummy and vintage like your grandmother made it. Do the quilt sandwich and do the quilting now. I wanted to mention that this can be cut individually, including the quilt sandwich, so that you on your home machine, if you have a smaller regular construction home machine, you can quilt this very easily just by doing what I did here, which is I used horizontal lines that at mix and match intervals. Some of them are a little wiggly. I wasn't too careful about making a straight line, and they mix and match really well in between all the strips, and they sort of mirror that geometric look that we like about how scrappy and fun and primitive this kind of looks. You can stop now if you wish and go ahead and just take your quilt top and make a lap rug, and it's a darling, darling gift or project and very quick, as you know. So if you want to just stop now and bind it, you're good to go. So now we're going to cut this apart using our self-healing mat, our straight edge, and our rotary cutting tool. We're going to square everything up and we're going to even up the edges, and then we're going to bind it. And here we go again, 2.5 inch strip with the fabric that we're going to sew together using our, remember this diagonal seam, just like we did to build the jelly roll. We're going to make a standard folded binding. So once these are all sewn together, you measure the sides and the bottom and the top and figure out how many strips you're going to need. The standard width of fabric is between 40 and 42 inches, so figure that all out and sew your strips together with our diagonal seam. Then we fold that in half. We're going to sew it down with the cut edge equal to the trimmed edge and the folded edge toward the inside of the quilt. And we're going to make a scant 1/4 inch seam along all the way around, and then we're going to fold it over and over the edge again like that, so that when it's on the proper finished edge of the quilt, we're going to top stitch the fold down. Couldn't be simpler. 2 seams and your whole project is bound. And I hope very much that you've enjoyed making a gorgeous project, either a lap rug or in our case, the Christmas 3 different table runners that will be delightful for your friends, for yourself, for your family, for your home, for season after season to come. Thank you for joining me. I'm Beth Maitland, Drama Queen Bee, and we'll be back again really soon with another great project.